Welcome back to Citizen McCain. Miranda, we had a bunch of topics to talk about, but we decided we are going to scrap it because we have such an interesting interview coming up with my friend Tulsi Gabbard, who I guess really needs no introduction, former Congresswoman, presidential candidate, and she has a new book out, which is already a New York Times bestseller. We've been talking about having her on for a long time. We are good friends, and I think that I don't want to give too much away, but I think it'll be a very different interview than people are used to seeing her do.
Yeah. Can I say that we already spoke with her, and it's just like incredibly illuminating and very powerful. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I cried a little bit, and you know me, I don't cry about anything. Coco, who everybody got to meet last week. My husband is emotional and he cries about stuff all the time. And she's like, I've never seen mommy cry about anything.
Aww.
And so, and Tulsi's story got to me. So, it's a very beautiful and touching story of like friendship and perseverance. And just, she's just such an incredible woman who I didn't really know all that much about before this interview. So for anybody who thinks they know her, you don't. And if you don't know her, you're going to get to know her very intimately. So you're in for a good one today.
Yeah. And Miranda, I just want to thank you again for rolling with the punches. I know that we are going to have like a different show. I guess what's like fun about doing these kind of shows, and that's what's stressful, is like just like blowing things up last minute. But we have a lot of pop culture updates that I promise we will get to later on in the week. I have many thoughts on J-Lo, Diddy, Ozempic.
Poor J-Lo. We should just call this the J-Lo podcast.
Yes. So we're going to get to that. But like I said, I just think for right now, because this interview is so impactful in so many different ways, I think we should just get started with Tulsi. And we will, I promise, circle back. Miranda and I will circle back with our pop culture news later on in the week. Okay, all right. Welcome back to Citizen McCain. I'm going to be honest, it feels a little weird to interview this next guest because you're one of my closest friends and I text you all day long. But I have to read your bio because it's beautiful and very official. Okay, Tulsi Gabbard is an Army Reserve officer with over 20 years in the service, a former member of Congress and a presidential candidate, author, and keynote speaker. She was elected to the Hawaiian legislature at the age of 21, served 3 deployments to the Middle East and Africa, has represented Hawaii's 2nd Congressional District from 2013 to 2021, and was the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. She has officially left the Democratic Party in 2022.
Yes.
It's a beautiful bio. I know all those things, but it's like a beautiful bio. I feel like I just want to
start. Now that formal part is out of the way, I know. We can hang out.
I know. I'm happy to do it though. And I'm sorry. And you have, this is the most important part. Your new book, For the Love of Country, is out right now, and it's already a New York Times bestseller. Congratulations.
Thank you. You know how many times like you asked me like, oh hey, come and do this, let's go and do that, and how many times for like over a year I was like, I cannot do anything other than finish this book.
Yeah, and the first person to say you actually wrote it. You're actually, because somebody had a ghostwriter help her with hers, but I don't know who that is. That's me.
I did have some help, but what I found through this process was, this is the first book I've ever written, and I ended up rewriting almost all of it, just because it was important for me to have my voice come through and to be able to share the kinds of personal experiences and stories that are hard to communicate to somebody in a short period of time.
How have you been with the response so far? Because it's been out for
really
a few
nice.
weeks.
It's been incredible to hear from people, people who already know me and share that they learned something new about me, or that they were very moved by the stories that I told, and that my heart really came through. So I'm really grateful that happened, and then also just hearing from total strangers. I mean, I go in pretty hard on a lot of the challenges that we face in the country that ultimately led me to leave the Democratic Party. But even bigger than that is like, we have to save our country now. Mm-hmm. And so some of the Amazon reviews, and actually met a guy in New Hampshire who came up to me the other day, and he said, hey, I wrote this review of your book on Amazon, and this was the headline, and I had read it. And the thing that I appreciated was that it's obviously a very honest book, but people are leaving feeling hopeful, which is hard. And it's hard right now for a lot of people to feel hopeful we have these conversations ourselves in private. So I'm really grateful that is the takeaway. It is a feeling of hope and motivation that we, the people, are the only ones who can save our country.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I know firsthand it was a total labor of love.
Yes.
And I don't think it was like, based on just wanting to talk about politics. It just like came from your heart. And I know firsthand again how passionate you are about it. I'm so proud of you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
My books never sell, so
Stop
I'm so
it. That is a huge lie. Don't believe
the
that.
audio ones do. I'm just
yeah, obviously your most recent book, the audio book.
Yes.
I loved it, and I cried during some of the most powerful portions of that book.
Thank you.
Same right back at you. Like, I know you, so I know that you were opening up parts of your heart that you hadn't before.
So I want to start with, people are always surprised that we're such close friends. Yeah. And I think because like on paper, we're pretty opposite. You're vegan. I eat everything, including McDonald's. You work out all the time. I hate working out. You're very, spiritually healthy. You're in the military. I think that the military would probably kick me out if I joined the military. Like, I think like baseline, there's probably...
I can't imagine what you would say to a drill sergeant if they told you to do push-ups.
Have you seen Private Benjamin with Goldie Hawn?
No.
Okay, it's this movie where Goldie Hawn like accidentally joins the army, and that's me. And she's terrible at the whole... It's a really funny... Watch that movie, everyone. Yeah. It's really funny. But she's like with her Louis Vuitton bag, and she's like crying, and she's like, I don't want to be in the army. And then she ends up staying in the army just out of like pride. And then she does really well, but whatever. But I think I kind of want to clear things up for people, because I get a lot of shit for being friends with you, and I know you get a lot of shit for being friends with me. And I want to like explain our history, because I actually think it's really sweet. I mean, I'm biased because it's about us. So I met you. We didn't like each other's politics before we met in person, and we were both open about that. And it's actually been a great lesson for me to like not judge politics for people by their cover or whatever. So we have a mutual friend, and we can bleep it out if we decide we don't want to, but Van Jones, the CNN analyst, both you and I are friends with him.
Yes.
And he said to both of us, I went on his show and he was like, you're really wrong about Tulsi, and you remind me of her, and I think you guys have a lot in common. And I was like, I don't know. Are you sure? Yeah. Like, I don't know. And I think you were like just running for president, or like in the middle of running for president. I don't remember now. And I just also, like, that specific time in my life was a very dark time. My like dad had died. Yeah. I was working in the most hostile.
And Van's dad had just passed away around that time. And that was, you guys opened up about that quite a bit on his show. Yes,
that's how we bonded too. And I really like respect Van in a lot of ways. But he and I, like, he told me, and then I said, like, I was in this like really isolated place in my life because I was like the one person on The View that had a different political opinion, and I felt like every time I left my house, it was just like shoo, shoo, like ducking because someone's gonna scream at me for some reason. And so I like wasn't feeling like in a place where I was like, I don't really want to meet new friends right now. Yeah. And then he told you the same thing,
the exact same thing,
and I think you were probably like, no.
The exact same thing. I was like, what?
I know, you're like, I don't think so. So you came on The View for an appearance, and you were like, let's get lunch afterward. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, like, Van says we should be friends. And again, it was like a very specific time in my life where I was just like really sad. And I went to lunch with you and your wonderful husband, Abe, and your sister, Davon, who also is like an angel from heaven. And we had like, I think like one of the best lunches I've ever had in my entire life.
Yes.
Where I felt really, and I'm not going to keep talking because it's your interview.
No.
But I felt so, like, I'm going to cry already. I felt like so seen by another woman, because I think it's really hard for people in the world to see women who are strong and tough and don't take shit and mean what we say and say what we mean, to treat us that we're not like Bond villains. No. And a lot of people in the media treat both of us like we are not real human women.
Yes.
And I felt like, and you really,
which sounds so strange, but it's true.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
I felt exactly the same way, and I'm trying to think of another time in my life. There's probably maybe only one or two other times in my life where that's happened, where I've met someone for the first time and experienced that kind of connection in such a powerful and deep way. It wasn't just like, oh, we had a great conversation or this or that. And again, it was surprising because even our personalities are so different. Like, forget the politics. Just we are just very different people.
Yeah, you're very
but we have
introverted
been- I
in a lot
am.
of ways that people I don't think
Yeah.
realize. Yeah.
But you are a very passionate and caring person.
So are you.
And I think that our shared care and love for our country ultimately is the thing that caused this to click. It's like, okay, we care about a lot of the same things. We may have different ideas, but we care a lot of the same things, and the people that we care about and that we are close to are bonded in that very same way. And that was
It's like 8 years ago.
yeah,
It's a really long time ago. I loved you before every other Republican did. I just want to say that. But the thing I remember too in that time is that like I felt for a long time just really, really alone in media and in the world in general. And I can remember being like, oh my God, she's super patriotic and like she loves America and she's in the military and we both want America to look the same and our families are really important to us and we're still super hopeful. And then again, just like I think as a woman, it has been really beautiful to have this friendship and relationship in my life where there's someone I can call who I know knows exactly what it feels like to be in like the middle of a media shitstorm, to have people like judge you and hate you for your politics, to have like, just all the horrible things that happen. I cannot think of another woman on the planet who knows exactly what it feels like, and to be able to call you and exactly what it feels like has been so special and so important to me.
Same for me.
So I just want to thank you.
It's during my campaign for president in 2020, which was really like all of 2019 and then into 2020. You were the person from the people who I knew in the world of politics. You were solely the one person who constantly reached out to me. You were always asking me how I was doing, like, where in New Hampshire are you? And you had been through so many of these same places with your dad. And I have never felt so cared for by someone from so, geographically far away. You sent little care. You're like, where are you going to be in a week? And you'd send me a little care package with like, a candle and some bath salts. Like, hey, go take care of yourself. And, the schedule is rigorous. You're doing like 5, 6, 7 town halls a day. You've got the media. You've got all this toxicity. And, the people in the political world, in my case, many of my former Democrat colleagues, and unfortunately, many of them are also former friends at this point, they run away from controversy. And I learned a lot about who the people were around me. And so it meant so much to me that you were just that constant factor of a dear friend throughout that entire experience, no matter what was going on, no matter the turmoil. And that to me took a friendship that was very good to the closeness of someone who I consider family.
I love you.
I love you too.
And I don't want to just have a love fest, but
Why
I do
not?
think
it's
it's
all
like
good. We need more love in the world.
Well, I do think like
but to this point, it's like and to the original, like, people are shocked. The trolls online or whatever. They're like, how can you be friends with this person? I showed my book. I was on Chris Cuomo's podcast. And so I showed my book to him and he was looking at the names on the back. He's like, oh, Tucker Carlson, Pete Hegseth, Meghan McCain. Meghan McCain.
I did a blurb.
She hates me. She did a blurb for my book. He's like, oh, Meghan McCain, she hates me, or she's this and whatever. People, I think that our friendship is, and I hope I don't sound, out of turn in saying this, our friendship is an example of what's possible and what should be the norm in American politics, where we can have disagreements, some minor, maybe some strong, on different issues or policies or whatever, and we can have those conversations with each other and still love and care for each other in a very deep and meaningful way.
That is something that I always had growing up with my dad and his friends, because he was friends with Democrats and Republicans and everything in between. And it was always something I really prided myself in modeling my life after. But it has become more challenging for the reasons that happened to you. The same thing happened to me, like, especially like in the past, like 4 years, like I just had friends I thought were really ride or die that got really honestly scared by, sometimes I think people think you're going to like infect them with their controversial disease or something.
I have had those literal words spoke when I was in Congress. Staffers for another member of Congress, we had worked on this issue before. We were looking at introducing legislation again, and that member's staff told mine, we don't want Tulsi's, I forget, toxicity to infect our member of Congress. So we're going to pass and not work with you guys on this.
I think the thing that people really miss about these situations is what you're cutting out of your life with you. If you make it, there are things you and I don't agree on. And honestly, it's become much smaller and smaller as the world keeps changing.
Yes.
But I honestly don't want to be friends with anyone I agree with all the time because your perspective on the world has illuminated so many things for me.
And likewise.
And then there are things that we come together on. Like, I really feel like there's just so many times in my life, Tulsi, where it's just like my family, a few close friends, and then like you.
Yeah.
And I said that when we went on the Israel march together, I was like, sometimes I just feel like it's gonna be the end of the world and it's gonna be like your family and mine. Honey, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm really sorry. I love you so much. You guys don't understand. Like, I'm sorry to be like this.
No.
It has been like a dark 4 years for everybody. And like, you're just always there for me. And like, it's hard. I think people sometimes don't understand that like, sometimes it's tough. Like, it's like we have husbands and families and like, the thing I didn't realize when I was younger is like, this shit comes at a cost. If you want to be in this kind of ring and do the things that we do, you're going to like lose friends and you're going to like, people are going to be really cruel to you in a way that they are not to people like AOC. Yeah. Like, women like that get passes. And women like you and I are going to be raked over the coals forever. And again, having someone in my life that really understands that has been just like, I'm sorry, I don't want to cry so much.
Don't.
It's just been, like I said, it's been like a really intense few years for everybody. And I even think of like COVID and like, just like, it's just really, I love you so much. I really love you so much.
Back, and everything you're saying.
Okay, one of the things that I did want to talk about, though, is like the stereotypes about both of us. Yeah. And I get, which has happened like even just recently, like I get very territorial of you now and very like, because I know you so well. And like whenever anybody says something ugly, I think that's normal with friends and people you love.
Of course.
People call me warmonger all the time, and people call you Russian toady. Mm-hmm. I know how it has impacted me, just in the sense that it's just been a really ugly thing to try and combat. How has that impacted you, just like personally in your life and then in your political life? People have said some really ugly shit about you. I was like going through some of it's like Hillary Clinton, Mitt Romney, and again, we haven't gotten into this, but like, you're a soldier who's been in the military since right after 9/11.
Yeah, over 20 years.
And deployments in Afghanistan and
Iraq,
Africa, Iraq. How has that impacted you? Because I still get really angry whenever I hear anything like that, because I think it's unpatriotic. It hurts. It hurts because it cuts straight to the core of who I am and why I do what I do. The thing that bothers me the most about that is I know why they're doing it. It's to try to silence and to destroy me or smear my character or whatever else, but really it's knowing that people will believe them, and people do, and it's a warning to other people not to speak up as I am doing, or to not dare to step outside of the norms or what they consider the mainstream. And that's the problem is the impact that it has on our country as a whole, and our ability to have these kinds of conversations where people are afraid, like, well, I don't want to be called what she's called. I don't want people to come after me like they're coming after you. And so as we talk about, being able to have conversations around very serious and important issues, this is why they do it, because they don't want for there to be a substantive dialogue that will allow people to learn and to grow and maybe rethink some of the things that they thought that they believed or understood previously.
which is so bizarre because in our lives we are constantly learning and growing and experiencing new things and adjusting maybe how we see the world because of that, and why politics unfortunately has become a place where that is not only frowned upon, but frankly it's not allowed.
One of the things that people always ask me about is if the streak in your hair is real, and it is, and I know that it came from after combat.
It was after my first deployment. And, I was in a medical unit, and every day for that year we were in Iraq was daily being confronted with the very high human cost of war, of which our brothers and sisters in uniform pay the price. You obviously come from a strong military family and understand that in your own way. It's something that fewer and fewer people have that close connection to now in our country. It's less than 1% of Americans who serve in the military. But I started to have this chunk of white hair that happened. I was like my mid late 20s at that time. But
do you think it's from trauma?
It of course, to me, I mean, not a hair specialist, but the only thing that I can use to explain it it is stress induced.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. I don't ever want you to change it. But when people ask me about like our politics differing in any way, I always say she has that streak in her hair comes from her time overseas serving. Yeah. And you cannot question any soldier, but especially someone who is like a physical representation on their body of what war takes. And I think people really just miss that. I mean,
well, it's and I hear some of the talking heads on some of the cable news networks and who don't know what it's like. They've never seen war.
No.
They don't have
friends.
Been to a memorial service in the middle of Iraq, in the middle of the war, for someone who they were joking around with and hanging out with the day before, and all of a sudden they're gone. And knowing not only their loss, but and I write about Frank Tiai in the book. He was one day away from leaving to go and spend his 2 weeks of R&R with his family in American Samoa, his wife and small kids. And this is what really makes me angry when people, instead of saying, hey, I agree with Tulsi's foreign policy because of X, Y, or Z, fine. Good. Let's have that dialogue and conversation and let viewers or listeners make up their own minds for themselves. But when you have people like Hillary Clinton and Mitt Romney, people who obviously have a lot of influence and a lot of power, it's not about so easily dismissing me. This isn't about me. It's about the fact that they are so they are so quick to say, well, she's a Russian asset or a traitor, a treasonous liar, and all of this shit that they have no idea what it is, what that cost of war is, and that those individuals in particular and others are so quick to say, well, yes, we should go start a new war. Let's go start a new war, without actually thinking through, is this necessary to ensure the safety, security, and freedom of the American people? What are the unintended consequences and costs of this action going to be? And that is the thing that angers me the most, is we can disagree on how to get to a certain point. But when you don't care about my brothers and sisters in uniform, you don't care about the Gold Star families. We're approaching Memorial Day, which is a tough, tough day for a lot of us. You don't care about the cost that is paid by people whose names and voices will not be known or heard by most people in this country.
There's so many times when I want to do something with you or like go to dinner or whatever, and you're serving and you're on active duty and you're all over the world. And, I always joke because you're vegan, like you're eating like the shittiest food and you're very weird about food and like you're the most healthy
person ever. Well, the military's got a long way to go for like the plant-based, the plant-based constituency.
But I think that's another thing people really don't realize is just that like you're in it for real, and every time.
And I'm grateful. Like people say, oh, thank you for your service. I said, no, I'm the one that's grateful. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to serve.
I know you are, but how many people in in politics actually serve and are still currently? I don't know. I actually don't know the answer.
Well, you
to that.
look back to, your father's time in the U.S. Senate, where he served with Senator Danny Noe, Medal of Honor recipient, Senator Akaka, my former boss, World War II veteran, Ted Stevens from Alaska. I mean, it was a whole cohort of World War II veterans, the greatest generation, and that number has gone down significantly.
I think I want to ask you, we talked about like the toll things take on your family and the sacrifice. And like I said, when I first met you, just hearing your story about joining the military after 9/11 because you were so impacted. Right now, you made another sacrifice by leaving the Democratic Party. Yeah. And that is a sacrifice because you're opening yourself up to the arrows and already you get shit, and then it's going to be an extra barrage. Even from my personal experience, just in the last 8 or 9 years, however long it is that we know each other now, you've been put through a lot, and you sounded the alarm on a lot of things. And it's, from my perspective, it started when you wouldn't endorse Hillary Clinton for president, which,
That's
I think.
True.
Do you ever see like a sliding doors part of your life where, because you were like profiled in Vogue and like you were really the darling of the Democratic Party. You're like the first AOC for a long time. Not like your politics are the same, and you're nothing like her.
That can be a charged comparison.
Okay, I rescind that. But do you ever feel like there's a sliding doors where you do everything they want you to do, and you say every talking point that the DNC wants?
Yeah.
I mean, are you president now?
That I don't think that's outside the realm of the possible or maybe even the probable. The label of being the rising star of the Democratic Party and all of that attention that I got when I first was elected to Congress was very surprising to me and completely unexpected and not sought out. But the contrast between that and when things started to change, and it started to change actually within the first 6 months of my being in office, when President Obama came and said that he wanted to seek authorization from Congress to go and launch a new regime change war in Syria. I did my due diligence, I did my analysis, did my research, listened to the case that they brought to Congress. I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee and came to the conclusion that it would be yet another very bad idea, and one that they had not thought through what the potential consequences and costs would be, and said so publicly. Very quickly, I got a call from the White House saying, "How dare you do this? How dare you go against your own president? You're from Hawaii. He's from Hawaii. How could you do this?" And that alone was a statement in and of itself, both for them and for me. For them, they realized that she's not just gonna, go along to get along and all this other stuff. She has a mind of her own, and she's not afraid to step out and call out the president, the leader of the Democratic Party. And for me, what it told me about them was that they didn't actually care about the issue itself, which was evident. What they cared about was whether or not I would be a loyal follower and a member of the team. And so, you mentioned 2016, I resigned as vice chair of the DNC, and I started to really expose Hillary Clinton for who she is. You'll remember at that time, people were saying over and over, she's the most qualified person ever to run for president, ever to run for president. I was just floored that was in the history of the world, in the history of the country. And not only that was, obviously that was coming from her supporters, and okay, yeah, got it. But it was coming from, primetime anchors of major cable news networks, but without any qualification. Okay, yeah, got it. Titles, she's got titles. What did she do? What is her record? She wants to be president, commander-in-chief. As a soldier and as an American, I really want to, I know what kind of president she would be and how dangerous she would be for our country. So that definitely escalated things to a whole new level, and where I saw the wrath of the Democrat elite machine really set their sights on me, which continued and continues to this day.
Was it scary to pull the ripcord and leave the party and become an independent?
It wasn't. I've always been a very independent-minded person. I, remained independent-minded throughout my time serving in Congress and running for president, and it's part of why they had such a problem with me. is because I wasn't a conformist and I wasn't interested in complying when they said to comply. I had no problem challenging and questioning, their policies and their leadership. So in that sense, I did not feel a sense of loss when I left the Democratic Party. I knew that I had done all that I possibly could to try to bring that party back to being the party of JFK, back to being the party of Martin Luther King. And there not only was no interest, there was an open rejection to that.
One of the things I can remember seeking counsel with you about was when President Biden had asked me to endorse him at the convention. Yeah. You know this well because I called you flipping out. And I told you, and at the time, that I'm not a Democrat, and it feels, my dad in his entire life never, like, John Kerry asked him to be his running mate. Like, lots of Democrats had asked him to, like, cross over and somehow, like, endorse on the other side, and he never did it. And I remember telling his staff, because they were ones that called me, like, I'm still conservative and I'm a Republican, even though I, like, I dislike Trump and I didn't vote for him and I can't vote for him and all these things. And I can remember calling you, particularly after the choice of Kamala was the vice presidential choice. And I was like, I can't do any of this. This is insane. Yeah. And I have felt ramification and I have felt consequences for not endorsing President Biden in a lot of different ways. I also haven't spoken to him personally since, in any capacity, since I refused. And I stand by the decision. I look at his presidency. Yeah. There were a lot of warning signs in the beginning that I just thought, I cannot get on board with this. And also I'm still conservative, whatever that still means anymore. So I can't imagine on your level I can't imagine you. Like, I just know my baby experience and what it has felt like. And let me tell you, Republicans, we will, like, whatever you want to say about Republicans, we are family. Come in, join us. Democrats, you step out of line, you are out, and you are exiled and don't come back. Yeah. And I think that's why they're having some problems with demographic shifts right now, because I think people see that.
I meet people every day in my travels who tell me I used to be a Democrat. Mm-hmm. Every single day. Mm-hmm. And the party that I joined, over 20 years ago was that big open tent party. It was that, hey, we welcome everybody, no matter your background, race, religion. You might have different ideas or views on things. The Democratic Party meetings were very raucous and lively because of that. And you fast forward to now where it is today, and it is the exact opposite. And you're right. The Republican Party of today has more resemblance to that big open tent party that the Democrats used to be.
Yeah, it's just been, like I said, I have one more political question, then I want to move on. What did it feel like on the debate stage when you just smoked Kamala to holy hell? If anyone that hasn't seen this, it's like the YouTube moment where she called Vice President Harris out on her hypocrisy regarding legalizing marijuana and putting a bunch of people in jail because of it, and then going on the Breakfast Club and laughing about how she got high all the time.
Yes. I was surprised by how unprepared she was, because the things that I didn't have to, do a whole bunch of research to dig up her record as, the Attorney General for California. And I was very surprised that, you're running for president. I'm assuming you have people around you who are helping you prepare for a debate. You're going around the country saying, I will be the prosecutor president and I'm proud of my record. Okay, like these are some of the top things that you did and that you accomplished. This is your record. How do you respond? And she really didn't have any response. That is what surprised me the most. And it was great to hear in that auditorium. I forget what city we were in, but even the audience resoundingly recognized, like, this is a very bad record.
It's my favorite thing. I mean, when I'm sad, I'll watch it on YouTube, but she just looks, it ended her career running for president. I want to just switch a little bit, and this is going to be a little bit of a journey of a conversation. Some people don't know this about us, but when one of the other reasons we bonded at our original lunch was I had just had a miscarriage and been very public about it. I actually wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about it because, among other things, I was worried that the information was going to be leaked, because I actually found out I was having a miscarriage at a photo shoot at The View. And that's how much I distrusted my coworkers, that I literally was worried it was going to leak online. So I'd like tried to take control over it, and I wrote an op-ed by myself. And you said to me, like, I've had similar journeys with fertility, and we started bonding over it. And one of the things I don't think people know about you is that when I was pregnant during COVID, Ben and I had a really, not a hard time, but we, like anybody who's having their first baby, you think about, like, during COVID, it was like the apocalypse. I'm like, the world is coming to an end. And who are the people that, like, in my life, I would have my child's well-being, that I would want her to go live with and be with, if God forbid, like, Ben and I, something were to happen to us. Yeah. And we ended up choosing, and you accepted, you and your husband, Abraham. So you're actually my daughter's godmother and godparents, which is like, it's beautiful. And I think that, like, your personalities are very feisty and similar, and it's such a beautiful part of our life. And I stand by that choice just because I think our values are aligned. I think, like, it's the same. But, one of the things that's been difficult is that you have a journey with motherhood as well. And one of the things we always have talked about is, like, think again, because people can't see you or me like fully formed people, that the question comes up, like, did you want children? Do you want children? What has the journey with motherhood been like? And I think the first question I want to ask you, because I know you met Abraham when you were in Congress, when did the first question of wanting to have a child come up?
Well, first of all, it meant the world to me and to Abraham when you and Ben called and asked if we would be her godparents, and to have that level of trust was just something that is immeasurable, and it is priceless. So you have two such incredible, beautiful daughters, and we always love being able to spend time with you. I actually was. I think like a lot of people, so I got my first marriage. I was married very young. And, it was a very, I was barely 20 years old. The idea of life was simple. It was like, cool, we'll help serve our community in some way. We'll go surfing and just, start a family. I mean, have a small business, just have a very simple life in Hawaii. That literally was really it. And then, the terrorist attack on 9/11 happened, and it changed everything for so many people in this country. Certainly changed everything for me, where I hadn't ever thought about joining the military before that. It never crossed my mind. Both of my grandparents, my grandfathers had served in the military during World War II, but it just wasn't something that had crossed my mind. I knew I wanted to pursue a path of service in my life, but that wasn't one of the things. That I wasn't against it, but the attack on 9/11 changed everything. And so I made the decision ultimately to enlist in the Army National Guard, so I could continue to serve my state and serve our country. And that was in our young marriage. That wasn't really something that my then husband had signed up for. I shipped off to basic training, between basic training and the advanced individual training that goes on after that. I was gone for, 9 months almost. And then came back, and then just a few months later was when our brigade was activated for what would be an 18-month-long deployment, 12 months of which were in Iraq. I was running for re-election. I was in the state house at the time. I was running for re-election and withdrew from that re-election when I volunteered. I was not on the mandatory deployment roster, but I knew there was no way I was going to stay home and watch my brothers and sisters go off to Iraq during the height of that war. And so I volunteered to go. And it was very hard. I think for a lot of military families, for a lot of young families, it was challenging and placed a lot of stress on our marriage. And again, that was not something that was even a consideration when we got married. And so ultimately our marriage didn't last. And so those initial thoughts of, of course, I always knew that I wanted to be a mom. And I just assumed, okay, of course we'll get married, we'll start a family. That was put off by my decision to join the military. And when I came back from that deployment, we tried to make things work, and unfortunately it didn't. And so I continued on, and we were divorced. And throughout that whole next period, I really became almost married to the reason why I joined the military, to those ideals and those principles. So I went and I served as the lead Veterans Affairs staffer for my former boss, Senator Akaka, who was the chair of the Veterans Affairs Committee. Continued on with my military service, became an officer, volunteered for a second deployment. And this went on and continued in different ways and taking different shapes and forms for the next several years. And then obviously Abraham and I met, thankfully. And
He's so
I
wonderful.
knew he is
He's
amazing.
standing right there,
I know.
but-
He's amazing, and he's going to get embarrassed as I'm talking
Don't get
now.
embarrassed, Abraham. But I will say, like, I've obviously had the privilege of getting to know him. He's so wonderful.
Before I was serving in Congress and still serving in the National Guard at the time. And I don't know if we've actually had this conversation, but there was a point where I just knew I spent some time in prayer and just said, you know what? I have made this choice to pursue this path of service with my life, service to our country. And it's a hard life, logistically, time, scheduling, being married to, and you know this because you've lived this in your own way where not a lot of guys want to sign up for that life because I'm not home every day cooking dinner and I'm on the road a lot. And there's a lot of people who again, you are the representative for 700,000+ people. And there's an obligation and a duty that goes with that. And so you got to share, there's my time is split in a lot of different directions. So I just said, I chose this path for my life, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve. And if that means I do it solo, then I'm good with that. I'm good with that. And then it was like maybe a month later that Abe and I went out on our first date. And I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. I knew very quickly. We spent a lot of time together. Every time I came home from DC to Hawaii, I got him back into surfing because I told him, like, hey, if you want to hang out with me, I'm gonna be in the water. And ultimately, that's where he proposed, was at one of our favorite surf spots during sunset.
It's beautiful.
It was just the two of us out there in the water. It was perfect. And so we got married in 2015.
And she bought her wedding dress online and hadn't tried it on. That's my favorite thing about you. I was like, she's the most stunning wedding dress. And you were like, I bought it online. And it just came and it fit.
It really did. Thank God. It came and arrived at my home 2 days before the wedding.
Wild. It's so you.
It very much is. Very much the norm.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
So beautiful.
And our wedding was the most just beautiful celebration of love. Mm-hmm. And so, naturally, like, we started talking about starting a family ourselves. It was the first time I had really thought about that as a possibility, since I was very young. And it was exciting, but also recognizing, like, I was in my early to mid 30s at that point in time, and went to see a doctor, and we've talked about this before. As soon as a doctor says, well, if you get pregnant, it's a geriatric pregnancy, and you're like, what? How is that word allowed to be used? I agree, because
so ugly.
In the same breath, they tell you, like, don't stress out, just relax, and this and that. Like, you just told me that you're using the word geriatric.
Yeah.
And so we started to try to start a family, and realized that it wasn't happening right away, and some time passed, and it was challenging too, because we're traveling back and forth between Hawaii, and even just making a doctor's appointment was very difficult, given the demands on our schedule and logistics. But realized that given the biological tick-tock, because we weren't able to get pregnant in that first year, we decided to go to start IVF. And
you did it here in DC, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
I just know because you were staying with me for a period of time when you were going through it.
Yeah. And that was really one of the hardships. I mean, it's a very difficult experience no matter what happens. I remember, for those who don't know, you got to take a whole bunch of shots and hormones and all of these things in order to try to have enough eggs for the egg retrieval to happen. And so that ultimately you can start the process of transferring an embryo into your body. But I remember I was traveling somewhere and I had to travel with a cooler because you have to take these shots at very specific times of the day, no matter where you are. And I was in the woman's bathroom in an airport, some random airport, and this little girl came in and I'm standing there, putting this stuff, injecting this stuff inside me. And this little girl, she's like, "Ma'am, are you okay?" Oh. And it almost made me cry because obviously I had a lot of emotions anyway because of the hormones. But it was very sweet, but it was also very surreal, and kind of just part of this whole entire process that was a roller coaster. Because you go through all of this and then you schedule the first transfer and then you have the waiting until you can take that first pregnancy test, and feeling and hopeful and like, oh, I got this gut feeling, like I can't wait to be a mom, and all of it.
Let me tell you that one of the parts for me that's been challenging, and is why I was like worried about talking about this, is I have felt like guilt a little bit that it ended up working for me and then it didn't. And I think there's a lot of girlfriends like in the world that can relate to that. And you and I are both like spiritual and religious people, but I don't understand it. I don't understand why it just works for some people and doesn't work for others. And I had my own challenges, as you know, I did.
Yeah.
I had 2 miscarriages. I did.
This is something, I mean, we've talked about, and I'm glad we're talking about it in this way because for both of us, with what we were going through in our own paths, like Abraham and I, we didn't share with hardly anyone that we were going through this process. And, there was just, not even our members of our immediate family, because, you go through this and it's like, okay, yeah, hopefully this is the day we get to go in for the test. And then it comes back negative and, trying to remain hopeful. It's like, okay, we'll have another opportunity. And just going through this over and over again. A lot of women go through this. I think increasingly so, but feel a sense of shame about it when there really shouldn't be. And so, I'm glad that we're having this conversation because...
Well, first of all, I think you're like so brave to talk about it because it's so scary and there is so much shame involved. And there's so much shame with me.
Which there shouldn't be. There shouldn't be, though. And, I hope that through our conversation and other conversations like this, people don't feel so alone as we have at different times, and just know that, there aren't always explanations. I think that was the thing. Like for me, the doctor's like, well, you are one of the women who the diagnosis is unexplained infertility, which is hard to hear because, if at least something is diagnosed, okay, maybe I can do something about this. But the whole unexplained infertility thing was difficult. And this was, as hard as this was for me, it was extremely hard for Abraham to just watch this heartbreak over and over again. We ended up, taking had to make a decision, as I was talking about, and we were having the conversation about running for president in 2020. This was part of it. This was part of saying, okay, well, our hopes to start our own family, we have to put those aside for a while because of how we feel so strongly about the sense of duty that we have to serve our country and to try to make that positive impact. And as you said earlier, yes, it does. It comes at a cost. It comes at a cost. And so we set that aside. The campaign began really in the end of or for part of 2018, and was launched early 2019 through the beginning of 2020. When I suspended the campaign, we couldn't just go back and start again because the world was shut down because of COVID. So going to the doctor was not, they were not providing this treatment. In 2021, I was deployed to East Africa with part of a joint special operations task force. Go after the terrorist group, Al-Shabaab, the Islamist terrorist group there. And so it wasn't until I came back from that deployment around the end of 2021 that, we still had, we went through a few rounds of IVF, and we had, I went through 2 final procedures, and Abraham and I had a long conversation, and we agreed beforehand that, if this didn't work, then we weren't going to go through this again. And this was when you and Ben were very kind to let me stay with you when I was going to my doctor's appointments.
Girl, please.
And just being our family through all of this. And so, when that last transfer took place, we had no more frozen embryos, and I was back in Hawaii when when I was taking the pregnancy test. And, I couldn't just go and get the results myself. And, the doctors will say, don't just pee on a stick for this, because sometimes you just don't mess with your emotions even more, because sometimes they're not accurate. So go with the blood test. I went for the blood test and got the results back. And got the call from the doctor here in DC. Saying, I'm sorry, the results are negative.
I know. I feel it's been really hard as your friend. I love you so much, praying so hard and wanting this for you. And there's really no one on the earth I think would make a more incredible mother and father than you and Abraham. And, I know people sometimes are like, I don't think they even think about you and motherhood. I think they think that you were just so career obsessed that it wasn't even something that came up, and that is obviously inaccurate. And I don't know what to say other than I love you.
Oh, thank you.
And I just I think it's so brave you're talking about this, because you're not my only friend that's gone through this journey, and there's millions and millions of women, and I think it's becoming more and more common. And I just love you so much, and I wish I could take this pain away. I just really...
This is the thing, though, is that, for you and for other people who are blessed with children, my gosh, it is a blessing. And there should never, ever, ever be a sliver or an ounce of guilt, Meghan, at all. Because you know, we all walk our own paths, and this is part of the journey that I've been on, especially getting to that point where both Abraham and I decided that you know, that we weren't going to continue to try to do this over and over and over again. You know, through a lot of deep prayer for me, it's actually an experience that I feel has brought me closer to God, because it is centered around having faith that God has you know, he's got a plan for all of us, and that, you know, the part of me as a woman who, you know, dreamed of and longed to have my, you know, feel that sense of longing to have my own child. I have this, while that is not in the cards for me and for us, I'm in this unique position where I can actually do something to help other women and children and families. And that is incredibly fulfilling. It is incredibly fulfilling. And, you know, through this process, actually found, you know, because every time we went through each procedure, I was just like, you know what? Yep, I've got faith. Whatever's supposed to happen is going to happen. And then when you actually go through it, it's hard. It's hard to surrender in that moment. But having gone through what we've gone through, and having made the decision to not pursue, you know, at some point, it's like, first of all, it's very, very, very expensive. And second of all, just knowing when it's like, all right, like read the signs. And so we got to that point, and I actually came through a lot of introspection and a lot of prayer and a lot of love, came to that place of truly being at peace with that reality. And that while, you know, we won't have, you know, kind of the traditional family in that sense, we're blessed with so many people like you and Ben and Liberty and Clover and our own family and nieces and nephews, and blessed with the opportunity again to, in my own small way, try to serve and help improve the lives of so many people. And I am truly endlessly grateful for that.
I think it's just incredibly brave for you to share this. I feel really honored that you would even talk about this publicly with me. I know we had like talked about.
I'm surprised that I am honestly surprised that I'm still so emotional about it, because this was, you know, I mean, this was, it's been a few years kind of since that specific journey ended. But the emotions clearly are real. You know, I saw a comedy show in New York a few weeks ago with a guy named Andrew Schultz, and he has a daughter who's 2 months old, and I don't know him well. I've, you know, met him briefly, but he most of his show in Madison Square Garden was about him and his wife's journey through pregnancy and birth, which was through IVF. And of course, he's a phenomenal comedian, and so he made a lot of it funny, but through it, like, I know what that feeling is every step of the way. And it was in a very unexpected way when he said and showed a little documentary video on the big screen of when he and his wife got the results back to that pregnancy test that led to the birth of their daughter. Man, the waterworks started. And they were both tears of joy for them. And also, you know, it is just that reminder. And that's where I, you know, while I'm crying, and of course there's a sense of sadness and sorrow, it is also just, I am grateful. I am grateful. And I don't, the choices that I have made to fulfill that sense of service and duty to our country and deployments. I mean, these are things that a lot of military families go through, where they have to set aside, or they have a hard time making plans to do anything when that call comes and you go to serve. This is your choice. And so it's not something that is unique to Abraham and I in what we have experienced. But making that choice to take that emotion and take all of those feelings, and instead of which would be easy to do, is bury myself in a feeling of loss, instead channeling that in a way that I can somehow be helpful to others.
I mean, I just think you're spectacular, and I love you, and I really, like I said, it's been really hard to see this journey with you and to be on this journey with you, and then at the same time, me having the same experience Andrew Schultz did. I have felt guilty about it. I know you told me not to, but it's hard not to, and I just don't understand why these things happen and why they don't happen. I hope you don't feel like being godmother is like some kind of something negative in response. No,
of course not. And I know you would.
I don't want anyone to interpret it that way.
No, of course not. Of course not. And I know, that you and Ben made that decision very carefully, and as you should, taking that decision seriously and endless. Abraham and I, we both shed a few tears when you called us and asked us that, and we're endlessly grateful to know that that you and Ben trust us with your greatest treasure in life.
I think I just want people to really understand that, like, politics and being in the military and fighting, which we're told as women to do, and then when you do it, there's still a cost.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, I don't know. I just know you've sacrificed a lot for the country and trying to make it a better place, trying to make the world a better place, trying to serve your country in different ways. And I just don't think when people don't understand you as the person, and I understand, like, you're a politician, so people are going to, project on whatever, that there's real sacrifice underneath it all. And I just couldn't love you more. I really think that having you in my life has been this blessing in so many ways.
Same
and
here.
You make me feel less alone in the world in general. You make me feel like I'm not crazy. You make me feel like there's still a lot in a time when, I have a hard time finding things to look bright at, and we're so divided, and the country's a mess, and it just feels like the world's falling apart. You make me feel like it's not, and that there's still so much to hope for, and that there are good people.
There is.
I trust you with everything. I trust you. I really hope for a day when I can help pick out your outfit for your inauguration, because you'll need it, because you don't like clothes. I really hope. I just hope for that day. And I think it's actually realistic in the future, but I know how much you've given up. I've seen it firsthand. I've been there firsthand. I know what you sacrifice for everyday people every day, every day of your life. I've never met anyone other than my dad who was this dedicated to service, to America and to the military and to the world. And I'm so grateful, and I love you. And thank you for sharing this publicly. I know about it.
It's the first time I've
scary.
talked about it in public. Again, most people in my life, they it's just not something I've talked about. And thank you for everything. And what you just said is that you and I feel for each other, and what we have gone through in being there for each other. This is what I hope, in our having this conversation in a public way, will help other women also know that you're not alone, and that what you're going through, it's not the end, and that there is hope. That there is hope, no matter how different or similar our journeys are as individuals, as women, as as a family. There is no right way or really wrong way. Really, it's we walk our own paths, and having that love and hope and ability to truly live that fulfilling life. It's always there, and it's always there because God is eternal, and He loves every one of us unconditionally, no matter the path that we choose with our life, and that is where I draw my strength and inspiration and hope. And drive to be able to continue to do my best every day.
I love you so much.
I love you, Meghan. Thank you so much.
I don't know if there's anything else you want to say, but I love you. And I want to say once again, I feel like the end of the world and the end of my life, it's going to be like Ben and you and Abraham. I always say that, like, when there's like this insane, like when the world is coming to an end, you're always there, which is, I think, like the most amazing thing to have in a friend.
It is.
Like, I can call you anytime, and even, I mean, like, literally when I feel like the world's actually coming to an end, you're my first phone call.
Yes.
And it's just such
grateful.
a privilege and a joy, and I love you like a sister.
Thank you.
I would do anything for you.
I know.
And I will, and don't f- with me.
Trust me, I've seen it.
She's classy, I'll be trashy.
I love you, Meghan. Thank you.
All right, Miranda, that's our show for today. Obviously, I just want to thank everyone for watching. I want to thank you for, just being here as well and being a part of this. And I think women sometimes are not given the space to have these kind of intense, raw conversations. And I think the whole purpose of us having this podcast / digital show is to do that. And sometimes we talk about politics, and sometimes we talk about fertility and everything in between. So I'm really grateful for having this space and having this show with you. So,
well, and the beauty of sisterhood, because so often women are pitted against each other, especially in politics or in media, and to see a true friendship is just so like beautiful and touching. So that was really
and you're
nice
one of
to
my
see.
true friendships too. And I am so lucky to have such a group, wonderful tribe of women who are also very talented on camera.
Oh, well, thank you. I'll take that.
Yes. All right. Well, I think with that, we should say goodbye. And then coming up next episode, we have, you want to reveal?
Yeah. Our old best friend, our third host, Senator Ted Cruz from Texas, and he's bringing with him a special guest because they have something very interesting going on that relates to everything we just talked about with Tulsi. So stick around because this is a doozy of a week.
Yeah, Miranda's best friend, Senator Ted Cruz. They're so close. She calls him TC. Like everybody else is back.
I actually call him Teddy Bear, but that's between us. So
it's been, it's been 12 days. So Ted Cruz should come back to the studio.
I'm having withdrawals. Yes.
Yes, but he will be here I can reveal it, with Senator Katie Britt from Alabama to talk about their new IVF bill that they're presenting. So it's kind of like IVF week here on the show. And like I said, I'm looking forward to talking to them and another angle of the IVF conversation. So with that, we'll say goodbye, and I look forward to seeing you on Friday. Thanks for watching Citizen McCain.